Gul Dukat thanks Captain Sisko for taking care of his daughter Zial. Captain Sisko wakes up to Nurse Dukat taking care of him in a cave. And Dukat hates the Bajorn broken, wrinkled noses. But has he seen his own nose lately? Come on. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk on a rainy day in Los Angeles, and today we're doing a review of Deep Space Nine's Season 6, Episode 11, Waltz, written by Ronald D. Moore. We were talking about right before we hit record, and directed beautifully by Renee Auberjonois. This was January 8th, 1998. How you doing, Cirroc?
I'm doing great. Almost a year to the day, right? While we're doing this review. Yeah. But I'm glad you said beautifully when you kind of did the intro on the director, Renee Auberjonois, who I thought had some very good shots in this episode that emphasized the emotions. A lot of close-ups with the villain in the background, kind of in a blur.
Man,
close-ups on Sisko's.
Yeah.
A lot of those. Just love the way he played with the camera in this. Even the shots where you would see Dukat talking to himself or talking alone, but I like the lighting and the mood and setting of those shots. The wider shots that had Dukat kind of standing there off to one side of the frame. And you have to be clever because there were moments where you have to kind of always play the, Sisko doesn't know what's going on. He does know what's going on. It's like visions in somebody's head. So I did like this episode a lot.
Yeah, and can I just point out very quickly to everybody at home, Cirroc Lofton is wearing a green shirt that says in big bold letters, Jake.
Oh yeah,
there it is.
This is one of my favorite shirts. Thank you, Ryan.
That is my favorite shirt of yours for obvious reasons. That was we got you that for your birthday, and we gave it to you in Vegas.
Yeah,
and I'm just glad that it looks so cool on you, man. Because
I love this shirt. It's the you can't find a Jake shirt everywhere, so I'm happy to have one.
Yeah, and you said that one time you were wearing it, and some guy was like, "Hey, Jake," and you're like, "Oh, this guy recognizes me from Deep Space," and then you realize you're wearing the shirt. Okay.
Then I look down and say, "Oh, okay, that's what it is."
How'd you guess? Okay. Yeah. Anyway, looks great on you. I do love green on you. I think that's definitely a good one of your favorite.
It's my favorite color. Favorite color. Yep.
Okay. Anyway, so this episode, man, there were a lot of things to notice in this episode, right? Like it was certainly one of those episodes that didn't have a ton of stuff going on. It was just a little bottle episode that had obvious implications for future episodes. So it wasn't fully, it wasn't quite serialized, but it was, it was a bottle episode that had implications. But there was a very tiny, B plot. So what this was an episode that kind of forces you to really pay attention to the details and the nuances, and like you're mentioning, the shots and the lighting and the performances and the undertones. And my first feeling was that this was almost like a sequel to Duet. If you remember the first season's Duet with Major Kira and Gul, whatever the heck his name was. And right now the Star Trek fans are saying his name vehemently at me. But it was very reminiscent of that, of kind of like the push and pull of a Cardassian wrestling with his own conscience, but kind of wrestling with his own conscience with the other person. Obviously, Duet had Major Kira wrestling with her conscience as well, and it was really powerful. And this one was mostly Dukat, and Sisko Sisko wasn't wrestling with anything. He knew exactly his position on the situation. He's like, I just got to tell this guy whatever he needs to hear so I can get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, this, like, right away from the beginning, as soon as this show opened with Captain's Log, and Sisko starts going into how he feels about Dukat, and he says something to the extent of, a part of me wishes he were dead.
Mm-hmm.
You know. Then he says, but then his daughter died. Isn't that enough punishment for one lifetime? It was Sisko wrestling with his own, like,
right, yeah,
his own feelings about Dukat. He's like, well, I feel bad for the guy. He's, his daughter died. He lost everything. He went crazy. But at the same time, I kind of hate this guy and I wish he were dead. So it's like, it's a great, like, balance there. And I enjoyed the back and forth of the opening scene that they had. I thought that opening scene set the tone for the episode and let me know, okay, we're going to get into a real chess match between two of my favorite characters on the show, two of the, some of the finest actors.
Yes.
So I said, we're going to get into it. This is going to be a mano-a-mano, who can one up the other. And
it's a T-bone steak, right?
Yeah. So already I sat down and I was hungry, and I don't think my attention ever left the screen because I was focused in on, what I knew was going to be great performances between these two. And I love the way there is a push and pull between the performance. You have, when Dukat is pulling, Sisko eases up a little bit.
Totally.
And then when Sisko starts going hard, Dukat softens up. And and there's just this back and forth, where they're just going back and forth playing this game of, of chess. So this mental game of chess of who's, probing, pulling back, probing, filling out which way somebody's thought process is. And as I was watching it, just from the beginning, I was thinking, am I watching what I'm watching, or is this something else? And I don't know if you got that feeling while you were watching it, but as I was watching it, I was saying, okay, is this a dream? Like, is this a dream that's only occurring in Dukat's head? That was one thought that...
Interesting. Yeah.
That kind of crossed my mind as I was watching this. And I wasn't sure if the whole Dukat and Sisko, leaving and fleeing the station was actually a true story. So I was like watching this tentatively, trying to figure out where I was in, in the landscape of this story.
And along with that push and pull, the very first point you made just now, just made me realize that I kind of misspoke and misinterpreted a little bit in my previous point when I said that Sisko knew exactly what his position was. And I come to realize that was more on the surface. And as usual, Deep Space Nine was much more layered and much more nuanced than that. What this was more was, it was another emotional arc episode. Almost all these episodes are an emotional arc, for a character or two, in this case, two. And Sisko's was more subtle. We watched Dukat's struggle. We can all see very clearly, Stevie Wonder could, in fact, that he had this major struggle, but we couldn't see Sisko's as much. But upon revisiting it, when you mentioned the beginning of the episode, you're right. He was unsure how he felt about Gul Dukat. He actually wondered, has he suffered enough? And upon observing him throughout this entire episode, he realizes at the end, he has that little monologue to Kira, I believe it was, where he says, this guy is pure evil. Like, he made up his mind. Dukat was on trial with Sisko figuratively and also physically that we watched. But in Sisko's mind, he also wasn't 100% sure how he felt about Dukat. But by the end of the episode, he was 100% sure, and he had made up his mind. I think the last thing he said was, let me see, he says, I fear no evil. And from now on, it's him or me. And he said, life is so complicated. Nothing is truly good or truly evil. It's all shades of gray, which, by the way, was a nice nod to the worst episode in the history of The Next Generation. Next Generation, Shades of Gray, my least favorite episode ever. Anyway, And then he says, then you spend time with a man like Gul Dukat, and he knows what evil truly is. So yeah, he too had an emotional journey to where he was unsure and he kind of wrestled with how he felt about Dukat. And now he's like, no, this guy's beyond repair.
Yeah, it's like, when you have a wild animal that you bring in and you're like, hey, this animal's cool with me. He like,
and then you learn.
and yeah, like he's cool. And then there's just that one day where it's just like tries to go for your neck and you're like, reminder, this is a deadly animal here. This is, instinctually, it has certain things that could be triggered. And even though it's friendly and it lets you pet it for a while and, it seems harmless, it can be very harmful. And I think that's what we got a sense of with Sisko in the beginning of this, wrestling with the thought of, he was actually putting himself in Dukat's shoes. He was like, okay, if I was him and I lost my power and my daughter and this, and if I went through all of this stuff, I would be a mentally broken person too. Yeah. And so he had some empathy for him being in that mental space of, being dilapidated. And you can sense that Sisko is like trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. I think there was that exchange between the two of them. So Dukat, and I love, I always think about this point when I watch Marco Limo perform.
Yeah.
He does deliver lines in a way where it's so unique to him.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. He stretches certain words out. He uses a certain tone. And in the beginning of this one, he says, so I'm a war criminal, one of those to Sisko. Mm-hmm. And Sisko says to him something to the effect, well, you're innocent until you're proven guilty. And that's basically, that's what the show is. Innocent until proven guilty. That could have been the title for the episode as well, right?
Right. Yeah. And Dukat kind of proved himself guilty in Sisko's mind. Yeah.
Right. And, that's what we saw unfold. And I like the way that you brought the analogy of it was really, that was the trial. We were watching the trial of Dukat. We were watching his defense. He was making his defense. He had his witnesses, Damar, he had Wayoon, he had, those were his witnesses that he was calling to the stand to say, isn't this the truth? Isn't this what happened? And even more, I mean, the way Ronald Moore paced this episode is also fantastic.
Totally.
Because the pace is perfect. It just comes here, there. Even when the B plot slides in, it gives you a little bit more for the A plot, right? So just like, that's what made me kind of realize, okay, the A plot is real, because the B plot started to confirm it, right?
Right. And there was also that moment where they give us the old okie doke where we think, oh, they're being saved. And you're like, that's weird that they're being saved with 17 minutes left in the episode. I'm not sure how this, and then you see, oh, it's
two other people.
Right. And that was great because that gave us a little herky jerky moment that kind of pulls us out of this thing. And then we get right back on track. It was a nice little, fake, but it wasn't enough to take us out of the story. It was just enough to, again, raise the stakes in an interesting way, in a way that makes us think, oh shit, maybe they aren't going to get saved. Maybe that was their chance. And now Sisko's on his own with this maniac.
Yeah. And I like the uncertainty of it. Like I said, in the beginning, I'm watching it and I'm thinking, well, and the way Ronald Moore wrote it, he said, yeah, there was this thing and the ship got hit and then Lieutenant somebody came through and, then he got hit in the head. He got hit in the head with O'Connell, got hit with a plasma something, and so the story was like, and you could see Sisko could confirm certain amounts of the story up until a part where he couldn't remember anymore. And that's where Dukat was like, well, that's when I took you into the shuttle. And then, and I didn't pay attention to what everybody else was doing. So part of me was thinking, is that a true story? Because you can't really trust Dukat, right? Did he really escape from jail? Did he hit Sisko over the head and escape from jail and drag him with him? Were they really attacked? So these kinds of things were going through my head as I was watching it. I'm trying to challenge the veracity of the escape story, where that wasn't even really the main bulk of the story, right? That was just one part of it, one tentacle of it that I was trying to wrap my head around. And while I'm wrapping my head around that, you can see Sisko is also trying to figure it out as I am. Sisko is like slowly he's like, okay, who made this cast for me? Which I really like that metal cast they put on Sisko. But he does the thing where he's like, who made this cast? He's trying to figure it out. Okay, so my arm was broken. You fixed it. You helped me out. So you must have good intentions because you could have left me for dead.
Yeah.
Okay. So he's trying
Lieutenant,
to,
by the way, his name's Lieutenant McCollum, not O'Connell. Okay. But so I misspoke there. But he's also thinking like, did a piece of shrapnel really hit McCollum suddenly out of nowhere? Or did you say, thanks for the help dragging Sisko into the shuttlecraft? See ya in true Cardassian form, which seems a lot more likely, right?
Right. And that's why I can't trust Dukat's story. But there's certain amounts of it that you have to trust because he did repair Sisko's arm. He's caring for him. He made a bed for him. He's cooking for him.
Save him. Like we know that Sisko would be dead.
Yeah. Yeah. So there has to be some level of truth to what he's saying. So just like Sisko trying to figure out where he stands, I felt like I was trying to figure out what's going on too. And I love that we were figuring it out together. Mm-hmm. And then at some point I realized, okay, so this is not a dream sequence. It's not all happening in Dukat's head. He's not just locked in a cell and this is all playing out in his mind. This is actually the part that's playing out in his mind is the part that they're showing us that's playing out in his mind, which is the Kira and the Wayud, right? So once I accepted that fact, which took me a while to just get settled into that, right? Like, okay, I think I know what's happening here. They really did have to escape. The Defiant really is looking for them, so I started to, settle into the story, and still like two actors that are fantastic going into the bulk of, I think the climax, when they started to kick it up a notch and really, turn the volume up is when Dukat says to Sisko, enough with all the lies and stuff. Let's, tell me the truth. And Sisko's like, you want me to tell you the truth? And it's like one of those a few good men moments. Yeah.
Yeah, but Sisko's really saying, okay, well, you start telling the freaking truth, dude.
Right.
Like, we need to know what's going on with Dukat here.
Yeah, but he does. He's like, you were the commander. You were in charge during the occupation. Right. And you were responsible for carrying out the orders. Right. Mm. And you killed all those people. Nah.
I saved them. I lowered the death rate by 20%. So this is, and now we're really getting into the crux of it all, which is that this episode isn't as much about did Dukat save Sisko and how and exactly where, what the steps were there. The question that's answered midway through is, why did he save him? And of course, Dukat's trying to act like he saved him because he was just saving a life. But we come to find out that he was saving him because he wants that understanding or that forgiveness or that respect from Sisko. He can't just let Sisko die. I mean, especially because right now he's out of his mind. He can't just let Sisko die knowing that Sisko thought he was a monster. He saves him and he wants to convince him and say, look, this wasn't my fault. Look how nice I am. Look how great. Tell your friends. once we, I'm going to pretend like we're trying to be saved, but I'm not really going to let us be saved so that we can really hash it out like, oh, we're old friends and we're brothers. And then and he just thinks that they're just going to come together and everything's going to be great. And then he'll finally be understood. That's his goal.
Yeah. Yeah, that is his goal when he needs somebody to co-sign or vouch for what he did and basically put a validation. He wants Sisko's validation. Sisko, was I right? Did I, did I do the right thing? Faced with my circumstances, this is the hand I was dealt. So, I was answering to Central Command. You know that, right? Central Command calls the shots. I have to carry out orders. And despite all of that, I still did my best to treat the Bajorans with humanity and respect. And I, outlawed child labor and I did this. And so he wants Sisko to say, yes, you were a great man. You tried your best. You, despite the fact that you were given all of those obstacles, you overcame them and still showed who you were. But unfortunately, he ends up showing who he is in this moment, which makes it just like, that's where the stakes keep rising.
So we got to take our break real quick, but there's a lot more to talk about on this one. Obviously, this one is very deep and very good, and we'll be right back on The Seventh Rule. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Yeah, hello.
As you know, we're doing a review of Deep Space Nine, Season 6, Episode 11, Waltz, which felt like and kind of sounds like a continuation of duet.
Yeah.
Right? From duet.
That's a very good point.
Waltz.
Yeah. A waltz, a duet, it's like a dance. It's a two-person thing,
And if you'll recall, before we get to the trivioids right now, but if you'll recall when we had Nana Visitor joining us for duet, and Aron Eisenberg, our brother, said to her that this felt like a dance between the two of them. He said, it felt like the two of them were engaged in this verbal dance, a back and forth. And then he said a duet, if you will. I remember that as if it was yesterday, but it was not. And so it was really interesting that he said duet felt to him like a dance. And then the episode that kind of feels like a secondary episode to that one is entitled A Dance. So I just thought that was an interesting thing and a very astute catch by our good friend Aron Eisenberg.
Absolutely.
So
Waltz.
Yeah. So here are this week's trivioids. It's Sisko and Dukat heavy, if you can believe that. There's a part of Sisko that wishes Dukat were dead. Dukat is a war criminal. Sisko is testifying for the prosecution. Dukat thanks Sisko for taking care of his daughter, Zial. Dukat just wants a bottle of Kanar and an Orion slave girl. That's all. And by the way, in that line, when Sisko says, I'll see what I can do, I thought he was going to go like, I'll see what I can do, ... about the Kanar. Right? a nice little, like, I'll check on the Kanar for you, you weirdo. Anyway.
Yeah, but you know what? That line actually, just to highlight really quickly while we're on it, I thought that line showed that Dukat was actually reaching Sisko to some way, because Sisko found that amusing to some degree.
Yeah. Right.
And I felt like, oh, maybe he's reaching him. Maybe they're bonding over here, having a bro moment.
Mm-hmm. Also, and there's more to say about that too. But also, Captain Sisko wakes up to Nurse Dukat taking care of him in a cave. Lieutenant McCollum was hit by a piece of shrapnel and died, supposedly. Dukat looks like he's making a pot of hot water for breakfast. There was nothing in there. Dukat once cleaned up after some people that had an explosive decompression and didn't sleep for a week after that. Sisko says the soup needs salt and pepper, but that's what you get for cooking for a chef. Sisko reminds Dukat that they are not old friends. Dukat hates the Bajoran broken, wrinkled noses, but has he seen his own lately? Anyway, when he was kind of reaching Sisko and was trying to do so in the cave, that felt to me similar to another episode in which, few episodes where Dukat is trying to reach Kira. Many times we've seen this theme play out where Dukat is really trying to reach Kira, partly for the acceptance that he wants from Sisko as well, but also partly in a romantic way. But there was the one time where the two of them were stuck in a cave together, Dukat and Kira, and it was like a rom-com, and she was, kind of pegging him and stuff. There was like that
there was an ice pick in his butt or something, spike in his butt.
And it was just like, it was like this comedic moment where he's like this, he's like, and she's behind him, like, and so he was just wishing, he was like, God, I hope I sit on a spike again. This will just really bring us together.
Yeah. Sisko was sitting on a spike. He had a fork up. His spike was a fork.
Right. That is true. And he's like, well, this must have been very uncomfortable. What could you possibly? But that's when he snaps. That's when he starts.
Yeah.
Kind of like how Wei-Yun can flip from being, oh, I'm so happy and charming and I wish you all the best, to like, all right. And, and his voice got lower and more gravelly. And a few of the lines he said were like really, almost demented in a way. I did make a note of them. I don't remember exactly what they were, but he was just kind of like, unless you were trying to escape or whatever, and he gets really menacing there. And by the way, I just want to make one more note. Cardassians look way more intimidating when their hair gets messy. They look like monsters.
Yeah, they do. The rock and roll Cardassian guy is not to be messed with.
Yeah.
Once his hair comes undone, he's just like, uh-oh, watch out. But yeah, no, I love the moments. They had some incredible moments. I was going to bring out the Wei-Yun performance with Jeff Combs kind of laughing at him and just
good.
Here's just the way he was laughing at him, and then cut to Kira laughing at him, and just and so I felt like Dukat's problem is that he thinks everybody's laughing at him. Right, because that's what he wants, respect, and he thinks, well, Kira's laughing at me. We've seen Damar laugh at him a few times, and then you got Wei-Yun laughing at me. It's like my subordinates are laughing at me, my superiors are laughing at me, my co-workers are laughing. Like, all of these people have no respect for me, and I want my respect, and that's what this episode really was about. And as we see, Dukat realizes the only way to get his respect is for him at least, that he thinks is to become evil Dukat and just go full blown and make no apologies for who he is, not try to excuse or get anybody's blessings or approval.
Right. He decides that the way he's going to get his respect is to win, to just say, you know what I need to do? I'm never going to convince these people to respect me. I need to destroy them. And that will make them respect me, as if I just topple everything. And that's, that's the way he sees it. I mean, he's already a kind of a dictator. In his mind, he isn't, but from the outside looking in, it sure looks like that. But then on top of that, he's snapped, he's lost his mind, he's hallucinating things. And then on top of that, he's now had this epiphany while hallucinating. He's totally delusional. He's got Kira that he thinks in his ear saying, we're going to go back and we are going to laugh and laugh and laugh at you. And she's cackling away. Mm-hmm. And this has just driven him into more rage and more hate. And he feels like any true villain, he feels like he's the victim, and he's just fighting back. Like they're attacking him. It wasn't his fault. He was just doing his job. He did the best he could under the circumstances. He came in, the occupation had already been going for 40 years before he joined in. So the best he could do was improve the conditions. So in his mind, he's like, I am a freaking savior. I'm an angel. I saved lives. But to everybody else looking in, they're like, well, you could have saved more if you just, did non-compliance to your superiors or something.
Yes. And well, first, let me just say before I continue on that point, which is to me the lesser of two evils point, right? I want to go into, well, let me continue on that first. The lesser to two evil points. So he's saying, it was a 50% reduction in labor. Child labor was abolished. Medical care was improved, and food rations increased, right? And so he's like, he's highlighting his, accomplishments or what he's done, But that leads me to the point of lesser of two evils, the idea of lesser of two evils. So to say, well, I didn't kill all the children. And I spared some of the grandmothers, and I didn't throw them into the boiling water. I only
stabbed them.
I stabbed them, or I vaporized them really quickly. It was painless. It was a painless being away.
It was humane.
It was so humane. It's like and that's the idea of lesser of two evils. Is like, oh well, which one is better? Like to kill him with the knife or to kill him with this pillow that I'm going to put on your face, right? It's like, well, I killed him with a pillow. It was so soft and gentle. It was nice and
what a sweetie.
Yeah. So I think that's part of it. And the writing. I want to go back to Ron Moore and his excellent writing in this episode, which he's always had. But there was a line that I thought stood out to me, which I just thought, wow, he just killed this line, Marco Limo. And that's when he says to Sisko, you've got to laugh, a universe that allows such radical shifts in fortune.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, wow, that is kind of, the universe does have those kind of radical shifts, because they always say, be careful of all the people that of how you treat people on your way up, because those are the same people you're going to see on your way down. Right. So it's like this radical shift of how the universe, the same guy that you're working for is now, you're working for him, or the work for you is now, you know what I mean? It's like things can shift. A guy who's homeless can be a billionaire and vice versa.
Right.
And so just the way the universe has this kind of polarity and often teaches us this lesson about who's really in charge, and it's not you, right? Because you had no idea that your fate could turn on such a dime like that. And it's
very true. Yeah, very true. Yeah, and I was looking for that exact quote, but Dukat points out, he said, look, I was a prisoner and you were the captain in charge. And now look at this. Suddenly, I'm kind of in charge in a way right now, and you're injured and I'm saving you. And he also says, look, depending on who finds us, one of us is going to be a brother in arms, and the other one is going to be a war criminal.
Yeah. And he said, isn't that fair? And it sounded pretty fair to me.
It's up to the prophets. Yeah.
It depends on who comes through that door. Right. And another great performance in the moment was the Sisko soup line, where Sisko looks at Dukat and says, are you going to put that in my soup? He's holding the flavoring or spice or whatever. And it's like, are you going to put it in? And he does. And Dukat said, how is it? And Sisko, very as plain and emotionless as you can have, says better, which I love. It was one word, but it was no smile. He just said better, but it didn't look like it was better. And he conveyed that in that moment. So I love that. He's like, it fucking tastes like water. But so that was great. The other thing I thought was clever in the writing was the moment where Dukat, he leads off. Sisko pries the back of the beacon open and discovers that it's not on. It's not sending the signal. And closes the panel back up, and then puts Dukat through a test. Right?
Yes, that was exactly it.
And that that's we, as the viewer, are kind of privy to this test, right? We're sitting there like, oh, this is great. But now we're on the inside. Sisko has shown us, what's about to transpire. So I thought that's clever writing as well. That's just that moment where, Dukat comes back and he's like, oh, no, everything's fine. And Sisko's like, well, why don't you open the back panel there and, double check the circuits and stuff and see. And when he does and he closes it back and says, nope, everything looks fine. Sisko said, that's all I needed to.
Exactly.
That's all I needed to know.
Exactly. That's it. That was the quote. And that's all we needed to know. I mean, we all already pretty much guessed, but we know that Sisko, again, innocent until proven guilty. He can assume, okay, this guy's playing tricks on me. We can assume that. But Sisko, being the fair Starfleet officer, says, okay, let me make sure before I pass judgment. What if he drops the phaser? Sisko needs to know, do I shoot to kill or stun or do nothing? Or, he needs to know beyond a shadow of a doubt how he needs to address this situation. And now he does. He knows that Dukat, A, sabotaged it deliberately, and B, will continue to lie about it, and C, is doing that because he's trying to get something from Sisko, who is injured and held captive at this point. It's not a man that's saving him out of benevolence. It's a man that's trying to keep him under, against his will, to get something out of it. It's a very different scenario. And then he knows how to address it from there.
Yes. And I think it's clever writing the way they kind of let that unfold in front of us in that scene. There was some great shots, back to Renee and the directing, the shots that he chose. I thought really good close-up shots. The one behind you is an example of like the close, tight shots that they had. I thought they were just showed the intimacy of the moment.
Speaking of that, there's always one or two moments in a Star Trek episode where I wonder, was that an actor's decision? Was it a director's hint, or was it on the page? And for me, this moment was when Dukat said he fixes his pillow. This was the cutest thing. He fixes the pillow for Sisko. He's like, here you go. That's better. Oh, gives him little nibbles on his cheek or whatever he does. He's like, there you go. And then because he's just trying to be like, look at what a sweetie I am. Boy, oh boy, we're going to hug all day. But after he says that's better, right? He gets up and he gives him a loving pat on the shoulder, like a little. And I wondered, I was like, wow, that was a beautiful actor's choice. Unless it was a beautiful director's choice. Unless it was just a smartly written scene. And I don't know which one it is. Yeah. I usually err on the side of actor or director in that case, because I don't think the writers of this show like to overwrite. I think that they trust the directors and the actors to make these kind of decisions based on the words that they've written. But I don't know. What do you think? Do you think that was, I don't know. I just love that little moment. It was a little extra thing.
No, I love those moments too. I think that was the actor as well. Something that I thought was the director was when Dukat says, I only killed, it was only a few people. It wasn't that many people. And then Kira kind of pops over his shoulder when they cut back to him. And she's like, it was millions, And I felt like that was like a director thing. But no, in that moment, I think it was an actor thing. But And then here for a writing thing was when Bashir and Worf were on the bridge, and here comes the communication from Kira that was kind of distorted.
Yes.
And this was another example of clever writing to me. Bashir's like, he kind of looks around and he's like, I didn't understand I didn't hear anything, Can anybody else figure it out?
Right. He's kind of dropping that hint. And we all, I mean, at least for me, I thought that the usual Star Trek way is for O'Brien to say, well, I didn't either. And Dax going, nope. And Worf going, and they all kind of look at Worf like, come on, we need you. And he goes, we will continue looking. But no, there was a little battle there. Yeah. And Dax actually went the way of following orders, which is usually different for her,
I like that moment. It was just a little bit of conflict. One, Worf was like, that's enough from you, Doctor.
He's like, you may leave the bridge. Oh, you just got told, dude.
Yeah. You see, O'Brien was on his buddy's side, like, I didn't hear anything either. But Dax was like, I understood what she was trying to say. Like, come on. Like, I'm not going to play this game and go along with that. So we know what she was trying to say. We know what our orders are. I mean, they were very specific when they left. 52 hours, 30,000 people. I wrote it down. I was like, 52 hours to save 30,000 people, right? So
that's it.
So
got to do it.
It was pretty specific. Yeah. But I did like the scene because it just had just enough tension there, just enough back and forth that gave me enough to continue going in the scene. But then you see Bashir just before. What the thing that pisses Worf off the most is when he looks at Worf and he says, your honor is not worth Sisko's life. Remember that?
Yes. But that's not really what's at stake. 30,000 people's lives are what's at stake.
Right.
And that was a great way for them to raise the stakes and in a smart way to where we're like, we can understand, like, look, we know he's your friend. We know he's the emissary. We know he's important, but like, you have these orders for a reason. Like, this is 30,000 Federation troops that can die if you don't, escort them. So this isn't a suggestion. And you're kind of a dick if you don't do it.
Exactly. Another moment I really liked is when Dukat said, Judge Sisko. Another, another verdict being handed down from Judge Sisko. You're sitting over there judging me for all my things. Okay, well, here you go, Judge. What about this? What about that? And then another thing was Sisko does great where he kind of eggs Dukat on. You should have killed them all, right? Yeah. Right? He's kind of like,
He's being an attorney. He's a prosecuting attorney right there. And he is just getting the guy to admit guilt.
Yes. And boy, does he admit guilt because, I've been on the fence about Dukat. I've told you there's moments when I think he's actually a good guy. And Zial really brought that part of him out. No, that's when I thought he was a good guy because there was a certain sensitivity and softness that he was around her. Even though he was still aggressive about it, I still felt he truly loved his daughter. So. Yeah. And he was capable of the emotion. You know what I mean?
And I'm going to go out on a limb here, and people are going to hate me for this, but I disagree with Sisko. I still don't believe Gul Dukat is a purely evil man. I think that he is a man that was born in a bad system, went through a bad system, clearly suffers from narcissism, and I say suffers because. Even if narcissists don't realize they are suffering. And now he is, on top of that, suffering from full-blown mental illness and delusions. And this is a sick man. And it, they demonstrate it all the time. Now he's a sick man who's also powerful. He's a sick man who's also done horrible things and should pay for the crimes he's committed. But remember, in his mind, he thinks that the world is out to get him. In his delusional mind, he thinks that what he's doing, he thinks he's flawed and cheats on his wife here and there and made a few mistakes, but overall, he thinks he's just misunderstood and he's a sick man.
Yeah, but I would agree with that up until a certain point. And he may have had an argument that, hey, I was in a system, you know, I grew up in this culture. This is what these people did. You know, you grew up in Nazi Germany in a certain time and you were a certain age, you would grow up into something. And so you would be indoctrinated by something, and that would just become what you knew.
But you still got to pay for those crimes, man.
But you still got to pay for the crimes, number one. And number two, the problem that I have with Dukat, it was not so much that he was following orders. Maybe he did abolish child labor. He should get credit for that. Maybe he did improve the medical care of the things. He should get some credit for that. And maybe he did feed people better, and so they weren't as starving. There should be some type of credit for that.
Oh, what a Mother Teresa over here.
Well, he's not a Mother Teresa, but you have to give credit where it's due. Like, it's like if a bank robber is fleeing the scene and he sees somebody drowning and saves their life. You know what I mean? I'm like, you get credit for that. You know, okay, you know, you did a bad thing here, you did a good thing there. You got to get the credit for it. And you also get the blame for the bad things that you do. So you get the credit and the blame. Right. But the problem I have with Dukat, which now has put me kind of in the same mental space as where Sisko is at the end of this episode, is when he reveals how he feels. I didn't have a problem with that until he starts to say it was the Bajoran resistance that caused all those people to die. So, and all they had to do was acknowledge that they were the superior race.
There it was, right. And
right, that's the thing. His superiority complex is what I had a problem with. You know, we're 100 years advanced. They're not equals, and all they had to do was accept their role.
Right,
and
that's full-blown racism right there.
That's the problem, right there. Right there is where the problem is, and it's like, well, I'm really nice to my slaves. The
key word there was slaves. You missed the key word there. I got my slave a birthday gift. What a boy. And I spent extra money on it. Oh, what a great guy.
Now, does that make you better than the guy who didn't? Kind of, yeah. But you're still a lesser of two evil, going back
at least in his own mind, it's better. But to us, we're like,
it's a lesser of two evil. Like, I was really nice. I bought my slave a birthday gift. Like, okay, but you're still in that. So we're dealing with a lesser of two evil, but it's still an evil. And that's where I'm at. I've kind of resolved where Sisko is. Like, no, this guy is inherently evil. Like, he needs the whole world to be subjugated or to basically accept their role as inferiors to him for him to be resolved in his own mental complex. And that makes him a dangerous person. That makes him, in my sense, evil.
Right. And now that he's snapped, there really is no discussion about where he is now. We can discuss how he got there and why, but now we know, look, his mission is to wipe out all the Bajorans out of malice. You know, he wants to kill them all. So, you know, he's crazy. He's a narcissist. He's in a bad system. But at this point, there is no redemption story for him as far as we know. At this point, he's just an enemy with no possibility of diplomacy or an understanding or redemption.
Yes.
We do have to go to
really quickly.
go ahead.
I know we're about to roll out, but I just want to highlight really quickly. Sisko had a line where he says, "Do it" at the very end. and just that do it. Right? It's 2 words, but nails this do it. And like, I would clip that and play it back because it was like, do it. Like he was pushing Dukat. And
I think actually what he said was duet. No.
And lastly was the resolution Sisko had when he says, I fear no evil. From now on, it's him or me. That was like another, I'm like, wow, this guy
he also kind of snapped, right? They both kind of diverged, where they both made a final decision of like, I'm gonna kill.
This is which way I'm going. I'm going this direction.
Dog
no longer like, I'll go here. I'm going here. I'm going this. Now they know I'm going right here, this direction.
So special thanks. We're going to talk more about this on the Free for All, guys. There's way more to this, obviously. Special thanks to Carmen, aka Skillet, TJ Jackson-Bey out in Missouri, Bill Victor Arucan, Yvette Blackmon, Tom, Homer Freezy out somewhere in New Yeezy, Eve England out in Wales, Dr. Marie Segal, Titus Mohler, Tim Baum, John Mann, Darlena Marie, Rex A. Wood, Dr. Mohamed Noor, Joe Balsarotti, Tierney C. Dieckmann, and of course, the legendary Dr. Susan V. Gruner. We'll see you on the other side. Always remember, 7th rule. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the 7th rule. This is the Free for All. It's time for some fun. Thanks, guys. All right. Joining us today is
we support
Gruner.
you.
We have Tierney C. Dieckmann, Dr. Mohamed Noor, Homer Freezy out somewhere in New Yeezy, as you know. We have huge soccer fan Tim Baum. We have Malissa Longo, Eve England, guess where? Out in Wales. And Gul Dukat, of course, throwing shade on all of us.
Throwing shade?
Never.
He was very bad in this episode. Anyway, this was a really cool episode. Oh, guys, before we get started, Jake Sisko guesses the IMDb score.
Oh, yeah, we didn't do that. Well, I like this episode. I'm going to say 8.6.
Wow. Any other guesses that didn't already check? Sue already checked.
No, I didn't. I rarely check. I don't like these IMDb scores. I hate them.
Too low.
This was a really good episode. So you know what I have to say?
6?
10. Damn straight. It's a 10.
Oh,
it's
Sue,
in
you're
a
so
song
pure.
now.
Anybody else? Any guesses?
8.8.
Yeah, it's got to be high.
Really strong performance.
Why
Yeah.
can't it be like a 9 realistically? I know it's not a 10, but why can't it be? What does it take
should
to
be.
be a 9?
All of us to put 10s on it.
Yeah.
I'm going to say an 8.2.
Okay.
Just to try realistically. I mean, we're all going to say 10 because that's what we do, but 8.2.
Anybody
And I don't
else
remember.
have-
I didn't check.
Anybody else have any guesses that doesn't already know? Melissa totally knows. That's why she's looking at
already
us
know.
knowingly. She's like,
8.8. 8.8.
8.8.
I'm like hot, cold, getting warmer.
Good
well, if
retention.
anybody chose $1, they would be the winner because it's a 7.9
Oh.
this week. 7.9.
What? Under
know.
8?
Oh, we definitely need to go in there
Ridiculous.
and hike it up.
I'm livid.
I know. When I
the
checked,
table.
I was
Okay.
like, what? And so I rated it high too. I was
Yeah, we
like,
got so-
no way.
We got so stuck
That's
on
terrible.
talking about this episode because it was so juicy. We didn't do any of our things. I got to do this real quick.
Uh-oh.
I know. It's
Here it
time
is.
for the nitpick, Gul Dukat. Where the heck did Gul Dukat get salt and pepper in a cave? Did he get it in the shuttlecraft? Because if that's
It was
the
in
case,
one of the ration packs.
if he can get salt and pepper, then there's other food, obviously, so he wouldn't have to cook anything. He could just open up a pack or replicate it.
was kind of wondering
There it
that too.
Maybe he had a salt and the pepper
Yeah,
rock. and he
Yeah, they
wanted
did
to go
explain. I think
They
they said,
were
yeah, they had rations, but Dukat said he wanted to go and get some proper food, and then Sisko told him to get the salt and pepper from the ration packs, I think.
yeah,
I
but
thought
they
he-
were in proper salt and pepper
Yeah.
shakers,
I know
not
they were.
like little ration
I
packets.
noticed
I
like
thought they
little
were like
whistles.
the little mini ones. You see those sometimes.
I think they just stole them from Quark's bar.
out of his pockets.
And I thought he went out to get firewood and stuff, but they already had the food. Like they needed something to
Oh.
cook, and then he got like roots and whatever could be scrounged,
Put it together.
something.
Was that a real fire, Cirroc?
Looked real to me. I would say it was a real fire. I wasn't there that day, so I can't say for sure. But I also think that Dukat may keep a salt and pepper shaker inside of his uniform because he does have a lot of space in that front part.
Oh,
He's
no.
got
And
napkins,
He's all
whatever you need.
Forks
Mustard packets.
and metal forks, not plastic ones.
Yeah.
Baseball pocket.
Mm.
It's
Well-
funny how the fork hasn't really evolved in all the years. You know,
I thought
the
same.
fork is still, the spork doesn't take over.
It's tried
Only
and true.
the fork. The fork lasts. It's tried and true. You can't
Yeah.
redesign something that works. It works too good.
Do you guys
Why
think
reinvent the wheel?
you know how
Yeah,
like when we eat Asian food, we use chopsticks oftentimes, we kind of adopt their utensils. I wonder if when they're eating hasperat or something like that, like then they use Bajoran utensils. Like what if they have different things?
That'd
Or
be
when you
nice to
drink Ractigino, you can't use a spoon to stir it. You have to use some weird nonsensical piece of whatever. You know, what if they have like all these different utensils? That would be interesting.
Different utensils. Yeah, that would be nice to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, we never see that, I don't think, do we?
Yeah. We know what the Cardassians' favorite utensil is. Really? Nobody?
Right.
Mohamed
Spoon?
knows.
What is it?
Spoon.
The spoon? Oh, Tim.
Oh.
That gets an eye cover.
Yeah. Well, Sue, great to have you
Yes.
joining us again, of course. You probably watched this episode recently. Do you have any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I liked it. I thought the title was great because that's exactly what they were doing. They were waltzing. Good. It was just great. Loved the lighting. Loved the acting. It was just great. I really wanted to pummel Dukat. God, plays such a great bad guy.
Now, did you want to
Yeah.
like pummel him with like hugs and stuff, or
Yeah.
like?
Oh yeah. No. No. Punch him in the face would be more like it. But
Hmm.
I'm a pacifist.
Spoon.
So I can't. Yeah. Maybe I can use the double,
The
Yeah.
double.
Oh, yeah.
The fist punch.
Get him.
I really want to try that in real life in some sort of safe situation to do so, just to see what sort of damage it would
I could
do.
think of a better place to hit him, but
Bajor?
There's some,
Right in the Bajorans.
Right into the Bajorans.
well, his those uniforms that have the little point all the way down,
They
they're
point.
pointing right direction for a knee or something.
that's a slight
This-
nitpick I had too. Is how long was he in prison and in therapy and everything since he all died? How long has it been? They said in the beginning. that he
Not
was in-
long enough.
Like 6 months or something.
Why is he still in his uniform?
No, that's stinky.
Been in a Starfleet, yeah, in that same uniform, sitting in the prison the whole time.
Yeah.
Mm.
He's not like an orange jumpsuit or anything like that.
That's a good
Well, when
point.
you
He
leave
could
prison,
pull,
they give you the same clothes you came in with. So
well, he could pull off
they
some of the
throw him back
armor
in
and
it.
use it as a weapon, theoretically.
I think
Well,
so, yeah.
maybe they throw him in the sonic showers with his clothes on and they just get it all done at
Just
once.
clean it all at once.
Sonic
And then,
showers
like
seem
a car
gross.
wash, they dry you on the way out.
his hair is finally sticking up. Like it did at the end when his hair just got up all. Oh, it was so great.
Does he have to get like a Q-tip to clean all the little individual nooks in his neck?
I have wondered
his
that. How
eyebrow?
do they clean? Lots of different Star Trek races with all their little nooks and crannies, and it's like, what implements has your race created to clean?
Toothbrushes.
Well, there's got to be something. Like the Ferengi have the tooth sharpeners, so there's got to be something. Just because we haven't seen it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
I think it should. I bet it does. Well, Gul Dukat, do you have any thoughts on this episode? Are you going to defend your guy?
I don't think I can defend this guy after this one. This is when he just rode the shuttlecraft off the side of the cliff right here. I actually noticed something when I was the final scene in the cave when they're just beating the crap out of each other, and Dukat is about to kill Ben. Has a gun on the phaser on him at that point. And Avery did this face that looked so much like a Jake face. And I noticed it. I wish I would have took a screenshot or something. But I wrote down actually to ask Cirroc, do you think that he watched some of the ways that you moved and incorporated it into his role too, to kind of do the father and son type thing? Because we all learn movements and ticks from our parents and maybe even vice versa. So I saw he did one face. I wish I'll go screen cap it and put it in the Facebook group later on. But it was like it was a Jake face, like, oh crap, like I'm about to get in trouble type face.
Jake's done a lot of oh crap faces, right?
It was like, oh man. And it clicked when I saw that. Yeah, it was like, and I was like, oh wow, that looks just like a Jake face, or I guess Jake learned that from him, or one way or another. But yeah, I love this so many strong performances. Even the delusions of fake Dumar and
so good.
How was Delusion Kira even just as magnificent and as horrifying as Kira could be? She was just killing it. She was putting the screws to all. They were just all wow. Damar was the only one that was
seriously good delusions, though. Seriously accurate.
Every single one of them were all. Yeah, it was great. I just kept writing stuff down last night. It was so much fun watching the whole thing. It was a great episode. But that was definitely what I wanted to. Also, the part where he finally cracks up, and he finally because Sisko just keeps feeding him. He knows which way he's going. He's like, you know what? I'm done with this. I want to break you. I want you to just completely crack and admit everything. And he just starts screaming about, I should turn that whole planet into a graveyard. That was just that turn right there. I think that might have been one of the best performances that I've seen in the show at that point, where Mark Malimo just finally, because he's so much about reserve, and Dukat's always been so much about, oh no, and he's calling him Benjamin this entire episode too, which creeped me out. He wasn't calling him Captain or Captain Sisko, Benjamin from day one, and then he finally just rips apart and becomes full-on fascist politician, and also a lot of other things I want to allude to. But now his crack up was finally, it's like, you've been waiting 6 years to see this, and it only gets wilder from here. That is for sure.
Ooh. For sure. Whoa. Wilder than this?
Wilder than that. Stuff I'm going to have a lot of fun stuff to say about. The
some good, some bad.
Some of it's wild is a good way to, I would say. But and lastly, my final thing was, I don't think I have ever been more scared of a character on here than when Sisko goes, I will fear no evil. And every little bass that he has in his voice in that one spot, he's just, no, he's not going to fear any evil. And I'm not getting in his way.
I'll tell you who I feared more was Kira when she's going,
Kira laugh.
I love it. So good.
Like sitting across the rock too, just like laying on the rock. Just, what's going on here?
Cirroc, did you have any connections to how Sisko and Jaco acted or anything like that in reference to what Scott was saying?
Yeah, I don't think Avery learned anything from me. So I would, that's an honor that you would say that, but no, I think that's just when you tune into an emotion as an actor and you're going to play an emotion, then that will naturally bring you to a certain facial expression, a certain body language. And I think that the emotion that Sisko is playing in that moment only brought up those same kinds of mannerisms, but nothing to emulate what I'm doing or something that he borrowed from my performances. I don't think so. I just
what about
think
vice versa? Maybe you picked something up from him that we saw in previous years, but we only just now saw it in Sisko later.
I can't do what Avery does. So for me to try to do that is just not possible. The only things I can do is pick up certain techniques that I would look at. He doesn't move around too much. He's not like a jittery person. He's very still in his body motions.
Yeah.
And even his facial expressions, he doesn't move around his head or have eyes that kind of flutter around the place. If you notice, most of his stuff is really straight. His eyes are focused.
That's confidence.
Those are the type of things I take notes of when I'm trying to be better as an actor. Not be looking around as much, searching for lines, but more delivering the line straight with your head and eyes focused on the person you're talking to. So I pick up things from Avery, mostly also off the set, just about how to be a gentleman in certain ways. So those are the things I learned from him as well. Acting wise, he would always say to make sure that my face finds the camera. When you're in a shot with a lot of other actors, sometimes you can be lost in the background or blocked by some other actors. So he would always teach me to be able to feel the camera on my face. But nothing in particular. No, like, well, you should do it like this, or frown your eyebrow, or I would, smile here or do this. Nothing like that.
Mm.
Everything that we did was just more like just natural vibe that we had with each other.
Except when he was directing.
We all learned.
Except
when he was directing me. Yeah, well.
Mm-hmm.
But then even then, he wouldn't tell me what to do. He wouldn't say, do this, do that. He would more explain what the situation was, like just giving me like kind of more reference about what situation, but never gave me specifics. Like, I think you should do this. I think you should do that. If he saw my face was like not pointing to the camera, I mentioned this in the Visitor episode, but when I came and leaned in and he was on the hospital bed and he was kind of dying and I leaned in to give him a hug, I was leaning in like this and he kind of did one of he's like, like the camera's here and I'm leaning here and he's like, no, this way. Make sure the camera can see you. So he actually grabbed my face and twisted it while he was grabbing me. He was moving my face and I was not resisting it because I understood what he was trying to do in that moment. So yeah, those are the kinds of subtle things that he does, but never, I think you should perform like this or do it like this, do it like that. It never really came down to that.
And by the way, guys, I don't know if you noticed, but Renee Aubergenois directed this one beautifully.
Mm-hmm.
Sue, did you start saying something?
Yeah, I was saying that it speaks of Avery's character as well as an actor, that he's not trying to steal a scene. He wants you to get the audience to get the best of you in a scene that that he's in. And I think that's really cool. You hear all these horror stories of other actors.
Mm-hmm.
There's like William Shatner and
that's believable, I guess.
It's in like 737,365,423 books.
Yeah, the thing about Avery with the scene stealing is I believe that the people who don't allow you to get your shine on are the more insecure people. And those are the ones that feel intimidated, or they feel like you're a threat to them. So they don't want you to have the opportunity to shine because they feel threatened by your success. And I believe that Avery is in a category of talent where there's nobody that can threaten his ability. So he doesn't feel like somebody's competition for him or will be able to outshine him or upstage him. So he's like, give it your best shot. I'm going to do what I always do. And nothing that you do is going to change or affect that or upstage it or outperform it or outshine it. So he's not insecure with himself. He's very secure with himself, which allows you to have as much room as you need.
It shows. Well, Eve England out in Wales, do you have any thoughts on this episode or factoids you'd like to relay from the companion?
Oh, I mean, I just love this episode. I love Dukat. He's my favorite character. So
of all, wait, whoa.
Yeah, of all of Deep Space Nine.
Wow.
Yeah. I just think he is just fantastic. He is just such a complex character. You know, he's got all different dimensions to him. What was really interesting, though, in the companion that I was reading today was that the writers didn't like or were surprised with how popular he was, and that people actually, a lot of people sort of were thinking, okay, is he evil? Is he not evil? And we're having those sort of discussions, because you certainly get that as you go through. You know, he's clearly a bad person, but he gets moments where you think he can be incredibly heartfelt about something, or charismatic in a way that you think, you know, is he as bad as he comes across? And I think what they really wanted to do in this episode is to really turn that on its head and to show him as the evil character that I think they'd always intended him to be. But I mean, I much prefer the fact that he wasn't this one-dimensional villain, and it just brought so much depth to him as he was going through. So I just really liked how this episode was really the accumulation of this. You know, up until this point, you always had those doubts. You know, you got this. You know, he was believing that what he was doing was right, whether we could see it wasn't right, but he in his mind thought that. And it wasn't until you had Sisko as, you know, the good guy in this you know, duel between the two of them, coaxing the fact that what does he really mean? Yeah, he really is, as Scott said, is this fascist and absolutely hates the Bajorans, and just was trying to convince himself that he was doing the right thing, that he was their friend, and all that sort of nonsense that he's spouting. And I just think it's just so fascinating how we get to this crescendo here, where he is, you can just see that pure evil in him, and as we know, and how that develops and where that goes, and no spoilers there. And what was interesting, I know, Sue, you mentioned about the term Waltz, because I was sort of there was nothing in the companion about why they chose that name, and I was thinking, is it more than possibly just that they're sort of doing this dance together where they're facing off and they're so close together? And I did Google so the old German word for waltz actually means to turn. And I was thinking, I wonder whether, you know, they probably didn't think this, but I thought this was really interesting. I thought, is this all about Dukat turning and ultimately becoming this evil character that he'd always intended to be? And then also, obviously, you've then got in the technique of the dancing, you've got sort of the highs and the lows and the what do they call them? You know, the ebb and the flow. And I was thinking the rise and the fall. And then you've got Dukat's character, how he's gone from his previous position, and now he really has got to rock bottom with where he is. And you've got Sisko then, who is the complete opposite, but then goes through the point where he is now the prisoner to Dukat, and the kind of role reversal. So I just thought, I mean, it was all just amazing writing for this episode generally, but I just loved how they did play off Dukat and Sisko in this episode, and it just brings out the best and the worst of both of them. So yeah, I just love this episode.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was a bit long-winded.
Not at all. Wow, that's pretty cool about the German term to turn. That's really smart. I also like that Sue's head almost exploded when you said Dukat was your favorite. I watched her. She kind of like.
No, he does a great job.
I saw her reaching for the unfriend button on Facebook. No, he was my favorite too. When on my first watch through of Deep Space, he's the reason I got into acting, or that I kind of took it more seriously. I just thought, just an incredible character, incredible actor. Speaking of which, Tim Baum, you've got quite the sinister sneer just a second ago. What do you think about this episode?
I thought it was a great vehicle for Mark. I thought he did an incredible job. Several things I liked right from the beginning when Sisko goes, he lost his mind, he lost his daughter, he lost his empire. No wonder he's like this.
Yeah.
And then when they're in the cave, and the way Mark went from completely rational to backcrap crazy, just like that, I thought was great acting. That was kind of fun to watch. And plus with Avery, the back and forth between the two was done very well. And one of the things Dukat said was he tried to rationalize his involvement in the Bajoran. And he was like, listen, I didn't start it. I made it more efficient. So I'm like, you're not helping yourself here. But I think, without giving spoilers, I think this episode set up the very reason why he becomes what he is next season, is that he's pretty much been kicked out of everything and he's got nowhere else to turn. So he's vulnerable. So I think this episode set that up perfectly. But again, I think my favorite part of the episode was Mark's performance, and Garak is the best DS9 character. I'll just say that. But anyway.
Yeah. Garak and Dukat were the two when I was first watching too. This thing switched up the I can't think of the word.
Scarf Homer.
The order.
Order. Okay.
The arrangement of the images. So now I'm gonna. Cirroc just mentioned your scarf, Homer. Do you have things to say about the scarf for the episode?
I think that it was warm in the cave, so the scarf would probably have not gotten a lot of use, though it could have been used to help to make a sling. Nobody knows how you make a sling out of aluminum or how Dukat did that, but a scarf I could do. I could make that happen.
Okay. All right. There it is.
So now you
so
know.
There you have it. That's
so
right.
there it is.
It's like a pipe.
It does.
Yeah.
It's like dryer tubing wrapped.
Yes.
Yeah. It reminded me of the old school Cylons, actually. It's kind of like they had their arms kind of like that. Yeah.
He made himself it was like the Terminator 2 hand. I thought it was pretty interesting that Dukat's that handy with some, like you said, aluminum foil and some ship parts.
Well, when you have a heart of gold like that, you're going to do whatever it takes to save your friend.
I want to make sure he's okay and he's not in any pain. Salt his food. That's right.
Melissa, do you have any thoughts or things you'd like to share about how wonderful Gul Dukat is?
I have lots to say about this episode. First, well said, Eve. I love everything that you said about Dukat. He's not my favorite character, but Mark did amazing in this episode, and from the opening scene, and there was a moment where he said, "I'm sorry," and the look in his eye was just so powerful, and it was so subtle, but you could read what was going on behind his eyes, and it was a beautiful moment. And I think the episode was aptly named. It felt like a waltz between Dukat and Sisko. And there was one line where Dukat says, let's see, "No more pretense, no more games, just you, me, and the truth." And I thought Sisko should have said, "You can't handle the truth." But that's what popped into my head. But Dukat, what's so wonderful about him is his complexity. And even though we definitively know that he's evil now, he still has his moments. And I love that he still has his moments of, okay, I can see where you're coming from, but you still know he's crazy. So there's still that gray in there, even though we know that he's evil. He's a dastardly man. But
he loved his daughter, clearly.
Well, yeah,
capable of love.
Yes, in his form of love.
Right.
And I think he shares a lot of traits with abusers who think that, the people he hurts deserve what's coming to them because they don't know how to respect him in the way that he should be respected. And
he's the victim, right?
Exactly. He's the victim of everyone else's, I can't think of the words right now, but, and so he blames everyone else around him, even the people who are closest to him, even Zial, for hurting him and, not giving him the respect that he's due. And, I think it's an interesting study because so many abusers are like that and think that way and lash out in the very way that Dukat has lashed out. So
it's great. I wonder if the writers in the room have had these kind of discussions before they wrote the episodes or as they were writing them, of like really trying to get in deeper into the psyche of Dukat, of like trying to give him some redeemable aspects. And then sometimes where you're just like, no, I give up on him. He's pure evil. And then they slide in, well, look, but now he likes his daughter. That's cute, right? I wonder if they were really going that deep or if it just kind of worked out that way. They probably did that on purpose.
We've had that, haven't we, throughout, haven't we, where there's been these analogies with, the Second World War is the obvious one where you've got, people in power doing horrendous things, and it's not just then, it's across history. And I think that's what the Dukat character kind of represents is how these terrible things can happen when you've got people like that who convince themselves that what they're doing is justifiable in some way, even though, most of them are clearly neurotic and narcissists, but it kind of gives you that explanation as to why these things happen, because you sort of think, how on earth could these people do these things that they do? It was an interesting seeing him realizing that and coming out of that and seeing his thought process for how he got to that sort of determination to why he thought what he was doing was right. Totally.
And they have the charisma to carry it off.
Yeah.
So people buy into it.
What a charmer. Tierney, your thoughts on Dukat's charm?
I have many thoughts. I have many notes, and definitely agree with lots of Eve's points, lots of Melissa's points, lots of everybody's points. I do like Dukat as a character. Garrick's my absolute favorite as far as DS9. But anyway, as far as I guess Dukat's psychology, I don't like applying any sort of diagnosable anything to a fictional character unless it is specifically implied, well researched. But with Dukat, he does have very specific tendencies of abusers, especially through narcissistic personality. And it's evident. But instead of going through that line of conversation, which can be very triggering to some, to me personally, even I'm going to choose to not see that as what they were specifically going for, other than, yes, he is an evil man, but for for Cardassians in general, and I know here we love to apply entire ontologies to fictional races just based on very little data. It's easy to do and fun to do, but with Cardassians, we see them represented as arrogant, as self-aggrandizing, lots of egotism, narcissism, but like any culture that has very identifiable behaviors, there's going to be some that represent just the minority of those behaviors, and then like Dukat to the nth degree. And I don't see that his people would consider him to be, say, an evil man, maybe a successful man, not on the best of terms for some, maybe not the most intelligent of their successful leaders, military, etc., but one that was also then pushed to the furthest edge of his own sanity. So barring the Cardassian traits that they've already got, his own arrogance, narcissism, etc., then he gets to this point of not necessarily being, I see him as a madman. He's a Shakespearean villain. I mean, he's written. And I guess I have trouble in this episode. The one thing I had trouble with, other than fabulous portrayals of the Phantoms, which we've gone over how fantastic Kira is. She does that adorable dorky laugh, and her delivery is perfect. And it's Renee had said at one point he had posed them all like birds of prey up on a rock, so it really brought something to the scene of just the two of them in a cave. But I have trouble with the hallucinations being so severe for someone that did not show any sort of mental illness with psychosis, especially given what Cardassians are, how they act.
We know of.
That's what I was going to say.
Beforehand. But I don't see him going from psychopathic tendencies to psychotic, even from extreme stress, especially because everything that he has done is to serve himself. When you really look at every bit of it, including everything with Zial, love or not, he loves in his own way. And it just, anyway, but what I like to think of it as is that these hallucinations are the first instance that we are seeing that he has with the Pah-wraiths. This is the first time they're coming in to screw with him. I mean, think of what they did to Sisko, and think of the vivid, hallucinations that they are capable of, what they can do. I mean, they could easily start worming their way in, especially with Dukat being at such a heightened level of stress. I could see them taking advantage of that, and he can just be passing it off as, I'm losing my mind, I've lost everything, I've lost the station, I've sold Cardassia to the Dominion, I've lost my daughter, I've lost my wife, I've lost my family, everything's gone, and I'm hallucinating now. Are you though? Are you really? Because as far as we know, unlike, say, Denobulans, who supposedly hallucinate under times of stress, then it's healthy and normal. Have to ask Phlox about that. I don't see this happening with Cardassians. I just don't, personally. But again, that's breeding an entire behavioral psychology and, background into this out of thin air.
Well, that's an interesting point there. And maybe some people here have more of an expertise, certainly than I do. Is it even possible for somebody, because I feel like it is, as far as humans are concerned. We don't know anything about Cardassians, but is it possible for a traumatic event to make somebody who otherwise was not hallucinating to hallucinate? Seems like I'm getting some nods from Melissa.
It's possible. It's definitely possible.
Trauma, especially severe trauma, can spark anything.
That was my understanding.
I definitely can believe that he would have started, and maybe he had a tendency to hallucinations before the traumatic event, but this is what pushed him over the edge. This is what sparked them to come to fruition. And we didn't see if he had hallucinations before this or not.
Yeah, that would have been fun though, to watch.
That would have been.
Yeah, he clearly has psychotic tendencies, and it's been hinted at from the beginning. So I don't think it's so far-fetched.
Psychopathic though, not psychotic.
Yeah, but even trauma can spark a shift in people.
Oh yeah. And I think we can all attest to having one of those moments of extreme stress and just our brain playing tricks on us. It's the Cardassian physiology was such a severe change going off what we already know that seems like a bit of a stretch for me personally.
Because what was interesting in the companion, it did say that what they were originally wanting to do with this episode was more like Distant Voices, the one with Bashir, and we're in his head. And they were going to go back and go through all of the stuff that all of Dukat's past. So going back to when he was with Zial's mother, etc. But they said they were struggling to bring it all together in a sort of
they couldn't structure it correctly or something.
I think that the main it was more done for artistic reasons, I think, than to have the devils on the shoulders and the hallucinations, and that's how I sort of saw it. It was in it, and I think I feel as part of the complexity of his character actually is that he has shown vulnerable moments up until this whole time. He even mentions it, I think, in this episode where he had that traumatic experience cleaning up the
exploded bodies. Yeah.
I mean, that was just like a little passing, but he thought that he was obviously distressed by that. So I suppose we just don't really know enough about Kardashians, but I think visually and in terms of storytelling, it was just such a clever way of doing it, and actually seeing those sort of manic versions of those characters was just incredible to see as well. But you don't really see them behaving like that because they were all the sort of the manic version of themselves.
If they were actually
just like him.
If they were actually in his head, did you notice that even they were criticizing him? He was still asking for their approval. He still needed Damar to believe in him.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes, everything is for his own benefit, no matter what.
Exactly. He's a narcissist.
Goes back to that.
So,
to the nth degree. Raging.
So we only have a couple minutes left, but Mohamed, you fixed the lighting. You had some lighting problems for a second there, and I was like,
I don't know what was happening. That was weird.
I can't call on him when he's got lighting issues, or they're going to think we did it on purpose. But do you have any thoughts on this?
I do. I'm gonna have a bit of a minority view on one of these aspects here.
Here we go. Finally.
Well, on the episode, first let me say I agree with everybody on the performances. The performances were outstanding, like absolutely amazing. However, there were two things that bothered me in this episode. One was more personal. It just, and this is not something this is not a diss on anything about it, but it's just this idea of descent into madness and complete disconnection with how basically your perception of yourself being completely different from other people's perceptions of themselves, of that person. That's something that for me is always a big fear. I'm always like, oh my God, am I wrong? I mean, I'm perceiving this way, but like, so watching this and watching this person descend into that, I'm like, oh my God, am I Dukat?
No, I think that's a resounding no.
Depersonalization is normal. It's okay.
The opposite. But that was definitely something that freaked me out a little bit. But I'm going to ask, this is the minority view part. Did Sisko do right? I mean, I feel like Sisko, he held the moral high ground, but he basically launched off a Dukat who was at least thinking that maybe he was kind of a good person into pure evil. Was that a good thing to do? I mean, I think Sisko basically screwed over the whole quadrant.
Maybe you should handle him with more kid gloves. Yes, Dukat. You are so right. Come on, buddy. Let's get home together.
No, the tricky thing is he couldn't placate him because the fake Kira would have like done the laughing crazy thing. But he could have been like, look, let me help you. I understand you want to be good. How about, and basically tried to help him instead of like, haha, I've showed you that you're evil. And he's like, okay, I'll embrace that. Like, what? That's not good. It's terrible. Oh, so that bothered me. I wonder if Sisko actually did a giant disservice there, but
his arm hurt a lot.
Or maybe he was acting out of self-defense too, being in a traumatic experience at that moment with Dukat. He did try to placate him to begin with, but that didn't work. So, but
it was the fake placate. I was thinking more of the like, I'm going to try to help you, as opposed to I'm just going to tell you what you want to hear. And those aren't necessarily the same thing. And I feel like he did the one extreme and then went the other extreme. Now, but I mean, fair point though, Melissa, that he was under a lot of stress and pain and everything too. So,
right,
and it's quite nice, isn't it, to see? Because I think there's lots of things about Sisko where I don't think he always makes the right decisions, and but does make him a really interesting character as well. I know what you mean. I was a little bit uncomfortable with that, but you could see he was doing it for a particular. But I think, as you said, the effect of what he maybe has ended up doing isn't great. But I think at the time he probably thought he was doing the right thing, because I mean he has pure hatred for this guy, and I quite like that sort of raw emotion that came from Sisko towards. Both of them came out as being their real selves, I think, in those scenes.
Wow, that is so cool. Because you're right in a way, Mohamed. Like that's absolutely true. And there's so many things in this one episode. We could keep talking about it for like an hour at least, just because it's kind of like a work of art where if you hold it at a different angle, suddenly you're seeing something different. And then you hold it at this angle, and it looks like this. Yeah. And it's really interesting. I wish we could talk to Ronald D. Moore and ask him about it. And he'd be like, calm down, you guys. It's just an episode of Star Trek. Relax. And we'll be like, get him.
Do you not know what we do here?
Anyway.
It actually kind of reminded me of personally dealing with the schizophrenic one-on-one. It's like you're going in so many different directions, they're going in so many directions, which is pulling you in so many different directions that it's just, but that's what that whole interaction reminded me of my experience dealing with somebody like that.
Wow.
Or dealing with the
Waltz. They're going back and forth. Who's the lead? I forgot.
God, that's so good.
Changes.
Yeah.
So good. So go out there and give it better than a 7.9, everybody. If we could, this is too much. This is too good. We do have to run, though. We want to give Sue a special thanks, and Tierney and Dr. Mohamed Noor for dropping this whole conversation on its head and making us go, wait a minute, we can't go now. We got to start all over. Gul Dukat, Eve England, Melissa, Homer, and Tim for Cirroc, Lofton, and I, and for the greatest human of all time, Mr. Aron Eisenberg. We thank you all for joining us, and always remember the 7th rule.